Right now, as you are listening to this, a war is being fought over your prayers. You cannot see it. There is no sound of it. No headline will ever report it. But it is real. It is ancient. And it is being waged with a violence that would terrify you if the veil were lifted for even a single second. And here is the most devastating thing of all. Most believers are losing this war completely, and they do not even know the battle is happening. They think their problem is that they are too busy. They think their problem is that they are not disciplined enough, or spiritual enough, or that prayer simply does not work the way the old saints said it did. They are wrong. The reason your prayers feel powerless, the reason your knees give up after 90 seconds, the reason that the moment you close the door to seek God, your mind suddenly fills with 1,000 distractions, and a quiet voice whispers that nothing is happening, that God is not listening, that you should just stop. That is not weakness. That is not a personality flaw. That is enemy fire. You are standing on a battlefield, and no one ever told you. We have raised an entire generation of Christians who have been handed a religion of comfort, a Christianity of soft chairs and softer sermons, a faith engineered to make them feel good for 45 minutes on a Sunday, and then send them back into the world utterly unarmed. We have taught them to sing about the blood, but never to fight in the spirit. We have taught them to raise their hands, but never to bend their knees in the agony of real intercession. And so they walk onto the field of prayer like soldiers with no weapon, no armor, and no plan. And they are slaughtered there, quietly, week after week, year after year, wondering why heaven seems made of brass. This is the hidden war. And before this message is over, you are going to understand the one thing that decides whether every prayer you pray rises to the throne of God like fire, or dies on the floor of the room where you knelt. But before we go deeper, I want to do something. I want to find out who is actually out there, because I believe that scattered across this dying world, in cities and villages and nations that most people have forgotten, there is a remnant, a small, stubborn, holy remnant of men and women who refuse to play church, who are sick of the shallowness, who are hungry for the real and burning presence of the living God. And I want to see you. So right now, before you go any further, I want you to comment where you are watching from. Your city, your country. Type it in the comments below. Let the remnant make itself known. Let us look at this map of fire and see that we are not alone, that from one corner of the earth to the other, there are still those who will not bow to the spirit of the age. Do it now. Tell us where you stand. And now I have to speak to the ones who are tired of losing. Because some of you have heard everything I just said, and something inside you broke open, because you know it is true. You know that your prayer life is a ruin. You know that you close that door and you have no idea what to do, no structure, no strategy, no plan. And so you last a few minutes and you give up, defeated again. If that is you, listen carefully. We built something for you. It is called the War Room Manual, and it is not another devotional to make you feel warm. It is a 30-day tactical battle plan for the secret place. It is a discipline tool, forged to help you rebuild the ruined altar, to conquer the distractions that ambush you, and to train you to stay on your knees until heaven answers. Let me be absolutely clear about one thing, because it matters more than anything else I will say. This manual does not replace your Bible. Nothing replaces the Word of God. Your Bible is the sword, the foundation, the final authority, and it always will be. The War Room Manual is the strategy that puts that sword to work. It is the battle plan that takes the believer who is paralyzed and apathetic and gives him a structure to actually fight. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments. If you are done losing this war, that is where you begin. And now close every other tab, silence your phone, because the preacher is about to take you onto the battlefield, and you need to hear every word.
I want to talk to you tonight about a war, and I want to talk to you about it the way a dying man would talk, because the church is dying, and most of her children do not even know they are sick. There is a sickness that has crept into the house of God in our generation, and it is the most dangerous kind of sickness because it feels like health. It is the sickness of the comfortable. It is the sickness of the man who has just enough religion to be inoculated against the real thing, who has been given a mild and manageable dose of Christianity so that he will never catch the burning, consuming, dangerous fever of the genuine article. And I tell you that the modern believer has been taught to pray the way a man fills out a form. He has been taught to bring his little list of requests, to recite them quickly, to add the holy words at the end, and to rise from his knees as though he had accomplished something. And he has accomplished nothing. He has touched nothing. He has moved nothing in the unseen realm because he never understood that the moment he knelt down, he stepped onto a battlefield where principalities and powers have been entrenched for thousands of years, and they will not surrender 1 inch of ground to a man who is merely going through the motions of devotion. Hear me, the devil is not afraid of your prayers. Let that land on you. The devil is not afraid of the prayers of the average Christian, because the average Christian's prayers cost him nothing, demand nothing, and threaten nothing. The enemy has watched 10,000 of those prayers float up like cigarette smoke and dissolve into the air, and he is not moved because there was nothing in them to make him move. What the enemy fears, what makes hell itself recoil and tremble, is the prayer of a man who has died. The prayer of a man who has crucified his flesh, who has nailed his comfort and his reputation and his appetites to the cross, who has come into the secret place not to ask God for things, but to be undone in the presence of the consuming fire. That man is dangerous. That man's prayers are weapons, and there is a hidden war being fought every single time you bow your head, and the war is over one thing and one thing only. Whether you will pray as a living man clinging to your own life, or whether you will pray as a dead man who has nothing left to lose. That is the war that decides every prayer you pray, not your eloquence, not your theology, not the volume of your voice, the question of whether you have died. Now I know that is a hard word, and I know the comfortable church does not want to hear it, because we have built a religion that promises life without death, harvest without sowing, resurrection without crucifixion, fire without the altar. We want the power of Pentecost, but we will not pay the price of the upper room. We want the fire to fall, but we will not gather the wood and build the altar and lay ourselves upon it. And God, in his mercy and in his holiness, will not send his fire upon an altar that is in ruins. He will not. You may beg for it, you may weep for it, you may envy the men in the old books who walked with such power, but the fire does not fall on the casual, and it does not fall on the comfortable, and it does not fall on the half-surrendered. The fire falls on the altar that has been rebuilt stone by costly stone, and on the sacrifice that has been laid down and will not climb back off the altar when the flames begin to burn. The fire shall ever be burning upon the altar, the scripture says. It shall never go out, but you must provide the wood. You must keep building, keep laying, keep dying. God provides the fire. You provide the fuel, and the fuel is your own crucified flesh. Consider what has happened to prayer in our day. It has been domesticated. It has been tamed. We have taken the most violent and dangerous activity available to a human being, and we have turned it into a gentle hobby, a soothing routine, a way to calm our nerves before sleep. But the men who shook nations did not pray like that. They wrestled. They agonized. They went into the secret place, and they did not come out until something had broken, either in heaven or in them. They understood that prayer is not the preparation for the battle. Prayer is the battle. The visible world, the world of policy and culture and the rise and fall of nations, is merely the smoke that drifts up from a fire that is burning in the unseen realm, and that fire is fed or starved by the prayers of the saints. And the enemy knows this. Oh, he knows it far better than we do. He does not care if you are busy. He is delighted if you are busy. He does not care if you are entertained or comfortable or even orthodox in your doctrine, so long as you do not pray with the kind of prayer that touches the throne and pulls down strongholds. The one thing he must stop at any cost is the believer who has learned to prevail in the secret place, and so he has unleashed against your prayer life a campaign of such subtlety and such patience that most believers never even recognize it as warfare. How does the war come to you? It comes first as distraction. You kneel, and suddenly your mind is a riot of noise. The unanswered message, the task you forgot, the conversation from yesterday, the plan for tomorrow. A man can sit in front of his television for 3 hours and never lose focus, but the moment he kneels to seek the face of God, his mind scatters like startled birds. Do you think that is an accident? Do you think it is mere coincidence that your concentration, which serves you faithfully in every trivial thing, abandons you precisely at the threshold of the Holy of Holies? That is not coincidence. That is strategy. That is an enemy who has studied you for years, who knows the exact second to whisper, who knows the precise distraction that will pull you off the altar. And it comes second as discouragement, the quiet voice that says nothing is happening, that you are talking to the ceiling, that the heavens are empty and your words are falling back into your own face. And it comes third, most deadly of all, as delay. The suggestion that you can pray later, that now is not the time, that you are too tired tonight and the morning will be better, and the morning becomes the afternoon, and the afternoon becomes never. Distraction, discouragement, and delay. These are the 3 siege weapons the enemy turns against the praying soul, and an entire generation has surrendered to them without firing a single shot in return, because no one ever told them they were in a war, and no one ever gave them a plan to fight it. Let me press deeper into this matter of distraction, because I do not think you have understood how serious it is. You have treated your wandering mind as a small thing, a minor weakness, an embarrassment to confess and then forget. But I tell you that the scattering of your mind in the secret place is one of the most precisely engineered weapons in the entire arsenal of hell. And it is aimed at you with the patience of an enemy who has all the time in the world. Why does the wandering come at the threshold of prayer and nowhere else? Because the enemy does not waste ammunition on ground that does not matter. He does not trouble himself to scatter your thoughts while you scroll through your phone for an hour, because that hour threatens nothing in his kingdom. But the moment you turn your face toward God, the moment you begin to gather yourself to seek the one whose presence can undo every work of darkness in your life, you have become a threat, and he answers the threat with everything he has. And the tragedy is that the believer feels the scattering, grows frustrated, decides he is simply not cut out for prayer, and walks away. And he never once realized that the very difficulty he met was the proof that he had stepped onto contested ground. The resistance was the confirmation. The struggle was the evidence that something real was at stake. If prayer were truly powerless, the enemy would not bother to oppose it. It is precisely because the praying saint is so dangerous that the opposition is so fierce. So when the distractions come like a swarm, do not despair and do not quit. Recognize them, name them. Understand that you have walked into the very thing the enemy most wanted to prevent, and let the difficulty itself become fuel for your determination to press through. And there is something I must say about discouragement, because it is the subtlest of the 3, and it wears the mask of humility. The discouraged soul says, "Who am I to think my prayers matter? Who am I to think the God of the universe bends his ear to me?" And it sounds like meekness, but it is not meekness. It is unbelief dressed in religious clothing. It is the enemy persuading you to disqualify yourself so that he will not have to fight you. Hear me carefully. The feeling that nothing is happening when you pray is one of the great lies of the pit, because the realm in which prayer operates is not the realm of feeling. You are not praying into your own emotions. You are praying into the throne room of heaven, and the effect of your prayer is registered there, whether or not a single corresponding feeling ever stirs in your chest. The man who prays only when he feels something has built his prayer life upon sand, and the first storm of dryness will sweep it all away. But the man who has learned to pray by faith and not by feeling, who keeps coming to the altar in the dry seasons and the dark seasons and the silent seasons, who refuses to measure the worth of his prayer by the warmth of his emotion, that man is unconquerable, because the enemy has lost his primary weapon against him. You must come to the place where you would rather pray in the dark and feel nothing than abandon the altar to chase a feeling, for the feeling is a servant and a poor master. And the saints who shook the earth learned to command their feelings rather than be commanded by them. But of the three, it is delay that buries the most prayer warriors, and it buries them not with a violent blow, but with 1,000 gentle postponements. Delay does not tell you never to pray. Delay would never be so crude. Delay tells you to pray later, and later is the grave of all holy intentions. The enemy is perfectly content for you to fully intend to pray, to plan to pray, to believe deeply in the importance of prayer, so long as the actual kneeling is always pushed forward into a tomorrow that never quite arrives. And the most chilling thing about delay is how reasonable it always sounds. You are tired tonight, and that is true. The morning would be a better time, and perhaps it would. You have a great deal to do, and you do. Every individual excuse is reasonable, and that is exactly why the strategy works, because no single postponement seems to matter, and yet the sum of 10,000 reasonable postponements is a prayerless life, and a ruined altar, and a soul that has slowly starved to death while fully believing in the importance of food. You must declare war on the word later. You must learn to treat the impulse to postpone prayer as the deadly enemy it is, and you must answer it not tomorrow, but now, in the moment, on your knees, before the reasonable voice has finished making its reasonable case. Now let me speak to you about the men and women who would not surrender, because there has always been a remnant who saw through the smoke and recognized the battle for what it was, and who armed themselves and went to war on their knees. They were not more talented than you. They were not more loved by God than you. They were simply more desperate, and they refused to leave the secret place defeated. They tarried. There is a forgotten word, tarry, to remain. To wait upon God past the point of comfort, past the point where the flesh screams to stop, past the point where the easy man would have risen and walked away. They tarried in the secret place until the breakthrough came, until the burden lifted, until the fire fell, and they understood something that the modern church has utterly forgotten, that the answer very often lies just beyond the point where most men quit. The enemy does not need to defeat your prayer. He only needs to make you stop a few minutes early. He only needs to convince you to rise from your knees just before the breakthrough. And so the whole war can hinge on a single stubborn refusal to give up, the refusal of a soul that has decided it will not move from this altar until it has touched God. Think of the man who wrestled at the brook in the dark of night and would not let go, though his body was breaking, who said, "I will not let you go except you bless me," and who limped for the rest of his life as a witness that he had prevailed. That is the spirit that has gone out of the modern church. We have forgotten how to wrestle. We have forgotten that there is a holy violence to which the kingdom of heaven yields, that the kingdom suffers violence, and the violent take it by force, that there is a kind of pressing, prevailing, refusing to let go prayer that lays hold of God himself and will not be denied. We have replaced wrestling with requesting. We have replaced agony with comfort. And we wonder why we are so weak, why the church staggers, why the gates of hell seem to prevail against the very people who were promised they would never prevail. It is because we have abandoned the place of wrestling. We have left the altar untended, and the fire has gone cold, and the enemy walks through our prayerless ranks unopposed. And mark this well, for it is the very heart of the matter. The wrestling was never meant to change the heart of God, who is already more willing to give than we are to ask. The wrestling was meant to change us, to break the proud and self-sufficient man, to wring the self-reliance out of him drop by drop, until there is nothing left but a creature wholly cast upon the mercy and power of his God. That is why the breakthrough so often comes only at the end of the struggle, and not at the beginning, for God is not withholding the answer out of reluctance, but is using the very delay to do a deeper work in the one who prays, to teach him a desperation he could have learned no other way, to bring him to the end of himself, so that he might at last discover the beginning of God. The man who quits early forfeits not only the answer but the transformation, and the transformation was always the greater gift. But it need not be so for you. You can be one of the remnant. You can be one who tarries, one who wrestles, one who refuses to let go. And the moment you become that, you become a terror to the kingdom of darkness, no matter how unimpressive you may appear to the eyes of men. And this is why structure matters. This is why discipline is not the enemy of intimacy, but the very road into it. The romantic notion that real prayer should always be spontaneous, that it should rise effortlessly on the wings of feeling, has destroyed more prayer lives than open sin ever did. Because feeling is a traitor. Feeling will abandon you on the very night you most need to pray. The men who prevailed did not wait for the feeling. They built a discipline, a structure, a war room, a fixed place, and a fixed time and a fixed determination, and they showed up to that altar whether the feeling came or not, and they fought there until the feeling caught up with the obedience. They knew their own weakness, and so they did not trust themselves to the mercy of their moods. They built walls of habit around the holy fire so that the winds of distraction could not blow it out. And when the apathy came, when the dryness came, when the heavens seemed shut, they did not abandon the altar. They kept building, they kept laying the wood. They understood that consistency in the dark is worth more than ecstasy in the light, and that the God who seems silent is very often the God who is testing whether you came to seek his hand or his face. I want to dismantle a lie that has crippled you. The lie that says discipline and structure are somehow beneath the spiritual man, that the truly spiritual simply flow with the Spirit and have no need of fixed times and fixed places and ordered habits. This lie sounds spiritual, and it is in fact deeply carnal, because it leaves the praying soul entirely at the mercy of the very flesh it is supposed to be crucifying. Tell me, what part of you decides on the spontaneous day whether or not you will pray? It is your flesh. It is your mood. It is the same unreliable, self-serving, comfort-loving flesh that the cross was meant to put to death. And so, the man who refuses all structure in the name of spontaneity has simply handed the government of his prayer life over to his enemy, and his enemy will govern it straight into the grave. But the man who builds a structure has taken authority over his flesh. He has said, I will not ask my feelings for permission to seek God. I have decided in advance, at this hour and in this place, I will be on my knees, and my mood is not consulted in the matter. That is not legalism. That is warfare. The soldier does not wait until he feels like reporting for duty. The soldier reports because he is a soldier, and the feeling, if it comes at all, comes afterward and is irrelevant to the obedience. This is the discipline of the secret place, and it is the most liberating thing in the world because it frees you forever from the tyranny of having to feel something before you can do the thing your soul most desperately needs. So I ask you tonight plainly, with all the weight I can put upon the question, what kind of prayer are you? Are you a tourist or are you a warrior? The tourist visits the secret place when it is convenient, takes in the view, says a few words, and leaves unchanged, untouched and unarmed. The warrior comes to the secret place to do violence, to lay siege to heaven, to wrestle as Jacob wrestled until the breaking of the day, refusing to let go until the blessing comes. The tourist prays and nothing trembles. The warrior prays and hell takes notice. And the difference between them is not gifting, and it is not eloquence, and it is not even time, though time is part of it. The difference is death. The warrior has died. He has nothing left to protect, no reputation to guard, no comfort to preserve, and so he can throw himself entirely into the fight, holding nothing back, because a dead man cannot be threatened, and a dead man cannot be made afraid. Until a man has died to himself, his prayers will always be cautious, measured, self-protective, and weak. But once he has died, his prayers become weapons of mass destruction in the kingdom of darkness, because they no longer come from a man who is trying to get something from God. They come from a man who has been entirely possessed by God. Let me tell you what this death actually means, because we throw the word around, and we have emptied it of its terror. To die to yourself does not mean to feel bad about yourself. It does not mean a vague religious sadness or a season of low self-esteem. It means the deliberate, daily, willful execution of your own self-rule. It means dragging your appetites, your ambitions, your comforts, your reputation, your right to be offended, your right to be comfortable, your right to govern your own life, dragging all of it to the cross and nailing it there and refusing to take it down. This is the mortification of the flesh, and it is the most unpopular doctrine in the modern church because it is the most costly. We will sing about the cross all day long as it is his cross and not ours. But the call of Christ was never merely to admire his cross. It was to take up our own and follow him to the place of crucifixion. And the praying man knows that every visit to the secret place is a return to the place of execution, where a little more of the self is put to death, where the grip of the flesh is loosened one finger at a time, until at last there is a man so emptied of himself that there is room in him for the fullness of God. That man's prayers shake the earth, not because he has become great, but because he has finally become nothing. And into that nothing, the consuming fire has been free to descend. I want to warn you of something, because the warning is part of the mercy. There is a window, and it does not stay open forever. There is a season in your life right now, perhaps, where the hunger is real, where the conviction is sharp, where you can feel the dissatisfaction with the shallow thing burning in your chest. That hunger is a gift, and it is a fragile gift, and if you do not act upon it, it will fade. The most dangerous thing you can do with the conviction you feel in this moment is nothing, because the heart that is stirred and does not act grows harder than the heart that was never stirred at all. The man who feels the call to rebuild his altar and then closes this video and returns to his comfortable, prayerless life has not stayed where he was. He has gone backward. He has grown a callous over the very place where the Spirit was trying to touch him. Do not let that happen to you. Do not waste this fire. If God is dealing with you right now, if something in you is trembling, then for the love of your own soul, do not let this be just another moving message that you consume and forget. Let it be the night the war turned. Let it be the night you stopped being a casualty and became a soldier. Let it be the night you went and found a place and got on your knees and decided that you would not rise until you had met with God. And I must tell you that the rebuilding of a ruined altar is not the work of a single dramatic night, however much we might wish it were. The altar fell into ruin through 1,000 small neglects, and it will be rebuilt through 1,000 small acts of faithfulness. Do not despise the day of small beginnings. Do not imagine that because your first night back at the altar is dry and difficult and full of wandering thoughts that you have failed. The first night you return to the secret place after a long absence may feel like the least spiritual hour of your life, and it may in fact be the most important, because it is the hour in which you laid the first stone back upon the ruined foundation. The enemy will tell you that since you felt nothing, nothing happened, and he is lying, as he always lies about prayer. Something happened. You showed up. You laid the stone. You refused the delay, and you defied the discouragement, and you pressed through the distraction. And though you felt like a failure, heaven recorded a victory. Because the warrior is not the man who feels mighty, but the man who keeps reporting for duty when he feels like nothing at all. Build the altar one stone at a time. Return the next day and the next and the next, and slowly, by a process you may not even perceive while it is happening, the ruin becomes an altar again, and the wood is laid again, and the day comes when the fire that God promised falls upon the sacrifice you refuse to stop offering. There is one more thing I must lay upon your heart before I let you go, and it is this. You were never meant to fight this war for yourself alone. The enemy loves an isolated soldier. He loves the believer who prays in secret and thinks his secret prayers are merely his own private affair, because the isolated soldier is the easiest to discourage and the easiest to pick off. But the prayer of the saint was never a private transaction between one small soul and a distant God. When you go into the secret place and you prevail, you are not only securing your own ground, you are standing in the gap for others who cannot stand for themselves. You are pulling down strongholds over your family, over your city, over nations you will never visit and people you will never meet. The intercessor is the most unselfish warrior in the kingdom, for he fights battles whose victories he may never see and whose beneficiaries may never know his name. And this is the dignity that has been stolen from the modern believer. He thinks his prayer life matters only to himself, and so when it grows difficult, he abandons it, reasoning that he is only hurting himself. But you are not only hurting yourself. When you abandon the altar, a gap opens in the wall, and through that gap the enemy pours into the lives of those you were meant to cover. Take up the burden again. Understand that your tarrying in the secret place is one of the most consequential things you will ever do, that there are people alive and free today because somewhere a hidden intercessor refused to stop praying for them, and that you are called to be exactly that kind of hidden, world-shaking, unseen warrior on your knees. And let no man tell you that you are too ordinary, too unknown, too unimpressive to wage this kind of war. For the great secret of the kingdom is that God has always done his mightiest work through his most hidden servants. The men whose names fill the books were not the only ones who prevailed. Behind every one of them stood unnamed saints whose prayers built the platform on which the famous men stood. And those unnamed saints will receive in heaven a reward that will astonish the celebrated. You do not need a platform. You do not need a title. You do not need anyone to know what you do in the secret place. You need only a door you can close, a heart that has died to itself, and a refusal to leave the altar until the fire comes. The smallest, most obscure believer who has learned to prevail in prayer wields more real power in the unseen realm than the most celebrated preacher who has never learned to die. So do not measure yourself by the eyes of men. Measure yourself by the trembling of hell, and resolve that before you are through, the kingdom of darkness will know your knees by name. Because the hidden war will not end tomorrow. The enemy will not call a truce because you listened to a sermon. He will be waiting at the door of the secret place the very next time you try to pray, with all his old weapons, the distraction, the discouragement, the delay. But now you know. Now the veil has been pulled back, and you can see the battle for what it is. And a man who knows he is in a war fights very differently from a man who thinks he is merely tired. You will kneel down, and the distractions will come, and now you will recognize them as enemy fire, and you will press through them. The discouragement will whisper, and now you will know its voice, and you will refuse it. The delay will tempt you, and now you will name it for the murderer of prayer that it is, and you will pray anyway. This is how the war is won, not in some great dramatic moment, but in the quiet, daily, stubborn refusal of a dead man to leave the altar. One kneeling at a time, one tarrying at a time, one day at a time, until the fire that God promised falls upon the altar that you refuse to stop rebuilding. So go. Go and close the door. Go and find the secret place, and do not go as a tourist, and do not go as a beggar reciting a list. Go as a soldier who has finally been told the truth about the war he was born into. Go as a dead man who has nothing left to lose and therefore nothing left to fear. Build the altar, lay the wood, lay yourself upon it, and then wait for the fire, and do not move, and do not quit, and do not rise, until the God who is a consuming fire has answered from heaven. The war over your prayers is real, but it has already been decided in the heavenlies by the blood of the Lamb, and the only question left is whether you will rise up and take the ground that has already been won. Take it. In Jesus' name, take it, and do not ever surrender it again.